हाँ मेरी स्क्रीन अभी दिख रही है तो
अरे ये 2 से क्यों जॉइन किया है? एक से एक हटाइए।
एक मिनट रुको यार, तुम लास्ट मिनट पे ना ये सारी चीजें हैंडल नहीं करते ना, तो इसीलिए दिक्कत पड़ती है। फुल स्क्रीन वाला पहले देखना चाहिए था हमें। अभी मेरे के 2 कहाँ से दिख रहे हैं? मैंने तो यार एक ही ज्वाइन कर। And can see my screen very well, right? Let's start today with our new masterclass we have designed, right? I'm just waiting to audience to just join us. We will be just starting now in less than a minute. Right, so today's our topic for the day is type of thread groups, right? This is a very popular term that is known among all JMeter professionals, right? So we will be today discussing on the same topic, right? So the topic for the day is type of thread groups in JMeter, right? So whenever this term comes to the mind, so there are a lot of different perceptions, right? What it will be, right? So like whether thread group is some group of threads or group of virtual users. There are a few anomalies, although the term is itself explaining the entire thing, right? But we will be going to discuss today about the type of thread groups, what is exactly thread group. So we will be starting with the first what exactly thread group is, right? Then we will be slowly shifting to understanding the exactly the basic mechanism, right? How thread group is basically working, right? So what exactly a thread is in JMeter, right? So this we will be gonna discuss. Okay. Then we will be coming to how we can create a thread group element in JMeter, right? So this is the basic entry point that we will also discuss how we can do that in JMeter, right? And then definitely we will be jumping to the core topic type of thread groups, okay? And there are few things we will be discussing, starting with the traditional thread group, the components, standard components of a thread group, which is basically used by 95% of the JMeter users, right? And same, we were discussing on the components, what all the different thread group components are there, right? So that's the illustration of same. Okay, so this all we will be going to discuss today. So let's start today's topic, and let's start with the definition, right? So what is thread group basically, right? So as we all know, in JMeter we are basically planning a load test, right? Load test means there will be a concurrency, there will be parallel users, lot of users that will be targeting a certain application. Okay, so where you will be injecting the load, right? And that will not be a single user. That's why we are using the tool, right? Probably it will be multi users at uh, for a for a given time, right? So to simulate that behavior, multi users doing multiple stuff, right? And then there is definitely there is a common trait. Few groups, few users are doing same transaction, right? For example, the one user is landing on home page, right? And one user is doing the login transaction, other is doing the logout, right? Those things are happening. So these all instances, this all activity that is being done by a real user, we have to we have to encapsulate that thing in a simulated user, right? And to start with doing that, to do that mimics setup, we have to create fake users, right? The virtual users, right? So in creating those virtual users, we need certain threads from JMeter, right? So that threads is basically a JMeter thread that will simulate a virtual user, right? And when those threads doing a common business action, like for example, 5 to 10 users are doing the login action, so that will be a thread. Okay. So now I hope the example is pretty clear, right? For example, there are 10 to 15 threads, right? So they are doing the same business action. For example, they are doing home. So we will club those all users and we will call it as a one thread group. Now, let's say next 15 users, they are doing some search activity on the e-commerce, right? So we will be clubbing, we will be merging, and we will be calling it as a second thread group. Okay. So now as it is stated, this is the starting point of JMeter test plan, right? Yes, definitely. The first step we are doing in the JMeter, right? So that is we are adding the thread group to the test plan, right? So if we will be talking about, we will be doing it parallelly. Let's see what it's happening. What is the initial step? Let's validate that statement, right? So this is our JMeter that is launched here. So the first step on the test plan node you will be doing is you will be adding a thread group, right? See, this is the first step. Otherwise, probably adding config allegation, listeners, this won't help, right? Their existence doesn't matter. They won't be doing anything unless you have the thread groups, right? Now, the group of threads that are executing the same scenario, as we discussed, 15 users doing a home transaction, we will call it as a one thread group, right? So, for example, we are creating a thread group, right? So, this is a home user, right? So, this will be a single thread group. We say, okay, there are 50 users land in in a minute on a certain website, right? And we want to simulate the load test for that. So we will be creating a single group for that. Similarly, there is a different set of users who are doing home and then they are performing login and then they are just simply logging out. Right. So from the data we got to know, okay, there are 50 type of users who are doing this kind of behavior. They are triggering this flow. So we will be creating a separate group, thread group, where we will keep the transactions related to this flow. Transactions, you can say, APIs, you can say, or probably UI scripting, whichever you will record, you will just group that entire activity in this group, right? So as of now, we are just creating the thread groups, right? Similarly, now, for example, there are few users who are performing login and then doing a search activity on the portal. Okay, right? So, but they are not doing the logout. So we identified, okay, there are also like every minute there are 30 users doing this flow, 50 users doing home login logout, and 20 users doing only landing on the home, right? So in such way, we group three thread groups doing the same common scenario. They are doing home, second group doing home login logout, home login search. So and they are categorized as three groups because all the users in the same group, they are doing the same transaction, same scenario, right? So next, as it's mentioned, it thread group holds other test elements like controllers, samplers, config element, and also the other list. Yes, so that's true. If it's the starting point, so definitely the thread group will hold the sampler and thread group will hold the listener. So here, just to make everybody aware of the scope, so here we are not mentioning the functionality of these components. So I'm just adding them and just mentioning, okay, what we can add probably and what thread group can hold, right? So thread group can hold the controllers as well, right? Similarly, thread group can hold configuration elements also. For example, you want to point a CSV, so CSV can also be defined at the thread group level, right? Let's move forward. So as we discussed, the virtual users required for the load test can be defined here, right? So this is the same thing which I'm repeating, right? And we have done it also. So if we take a look at the first group, so as per the requirement comes from the product team or probably from the production data, we got to know 20 users are landing on the home every minute, right? So we mentioned, okay, JMeter, we want 20 virtual users to be created to perform the transactions that will be coming under this thread group, right? So that's why we mentioned, okay, we need 20 virtual users to be created for this thread group, right? So similarly, 50 for this thread group, 30 for this thread group. So this is the same thing which is mentioned here, like virtual users required for load test can be defined here, right? So each thread simulates a real user requesting to the server under a test. Now, what does this statement means, right? So every thread that will be created by the JMeter that will be simulating a real user behavior, right? And then that user will be sending the request to the server, right? So, and this is like during the test. After the test, there will be no virtual users. Those virtual users will be ramped down by the JMeter gracefully. This is all scenario which we are discussing during the test. So test will definitely will have a duration, right? And for that duration, this thing will be happening. So for example, in the test which we are just discussing, right? So here, if you will see, there are total 20 users in first thread group, 15 in second, and 30 in last one. So now in total, 20, 50, 30. There are 100 users, virtual users which JMeter will be creating, right? So these all 100 virtual users will simulate a real user that will strike, that will send out the request that you will keep under this thread group, right? And they will be bombarding as 100 users are doing on the server. So that actually that statement means, right? So this is like this is the component which is simulating the users which are putting the load on the target server, right? And once the test is done, the users count, the threads probably, and the entire threads, they are just relaxed to zero, right? After test, there is no such user that is still hitting out. Okay. So now let's, as we have just seen the example, if you set the number of threads as 20, so JMeter will create and simulate 20 virtual users during the test, right? So this is what we are definitely discussing from the last 2-3 minutes, right? And let's see that thing very well with help of an illustration also. Okay, so we can see, let's say we have kept the number 20, right? So on the left, you can see the number of threads in the thread group. We have mentioned the number as 20. Okay, so you see, as per the diagram, the JMeter will create 20 or probably simulate 20 users, right? And now for those users, definitely in the thread group, we will maintain the transactions, we will maintain the request that will be targeted on the server, okay? And those requests definitely be going to the server. As we can see, request 1, request 2, request 20. There will be n number of requests from these all users, right? And they will be putting the actual load which we will be seeing on the server, right? So now in this way, this thread group will actually be putting the load on your application, right? So this is the component which actually simulate the number of users load you want on a particular server, right? So somebody says, okay, I want to run 100 users load test, right? So that is none other thread group that will define, okay, there will be definitely 100 number of users or 50, 200, 300, right? And definitely again, how that will be classified, that will also be depend on thread group, right? Okay, so for example, you want 50% of users to be doing the home page transactions, right? Only, nothing else. So in that case, you will create a thread group, right? In that thread group, you will just maintain the home request, right? Then in the test, you want, okay, 30% users shall be doing the like home and then log in and then just doing the logout, right? So then again, this will also be done with the help of another thread group that we will maintain in the script, as we just seen, right? That will also will be doing with the thread group. So in this way, we can create n number of thread groups, n number of group of users, right, to do a particular task, right? And n number of thread groups can be created in the JMeter based on the requirement. Okay, I hope this is actually making sense, right? And let's move to the next thing, right? So we are definitely discussing a lot on thread group creation, right? So we definitely understand, okay, this is the starting point, right? So now the next things comes to a beginner's mind, or probably who is just new to JMeter, like how to create this headcope element, right? Whether this will involve some code that will be doing the creation of users. No, nothing so complex. It's just simply a right click on test plan node, and you can choose to add thread group. Okay, and similarly, all other options are also available in the thread group. All right, so let's see that action. Right, as we have just seen, I'm repeating again. Go to the test plan, right, or probably you can just see a new one, right? So this is the default screen that is being displayed when JMeter is launched. So just right click, add thread group, right? So you will just see the thread group is added, right? In the same way, you want to add another thread group, you can add that, right? But you cannot do the nested thing, right? So in a thread group, if someone is assuming, okay, why we cannot add another thread group in the same thread? So actually, if you think logically, basically the thread group is defining the group of users that are doing the same kind of scenario, same task. They have same target, they have same transaction, they have same flow. So why we will involve two thread groups as a parent and child, right? So you cannot add a thread group as a child of another thread. Okay. So this way, this is how you can add to it, right? Then thread group have different properties, different components, right? So that we will be discussing, right? Let's comes to that. But before that, we will be discussing what kind of thread groups available in the JMeter, right? So now the JMeter tool, it provides different variants, right? Different options for adding the threads in the test. Different type of thread groups, right? How you can create threads. What all different options are there? So there are different options, right? Like there is thread group. This is the first one is the traditional and the most preferred option, right? 95 to 98% users are doing the first option only, right? So in this traditional thread group is there, then there is a concurrency thread group, all right? Then similarly there is a ultimate thread group, then there is a stepping thread group, then there is arrival thread group, right? And 2-3 thread groups there are more in the JMeter, right? So we will discuss in this session. We will be definitely discuss the different components of thread group, right? And will definitely add some striking differences or probably advantages in other thread groups over the traditional thread, right? So let's start with the traditional thread group. What are their components, right? What exactly thread group components are, right? So there are broadly thread group is divided into three sections: action to be taken after a sampler error, thread properties, and scheduler configuration, right? So first property is action to be taken after a sampler error. So that defines, like for example, in a thread group, if some error is generated, so what action shall be taken? Whether the thread group will be keep executing, it will be in execution phase, or probably the thread group will be stopped and the next loop will be starting for the same thread group, right? Or probably the test will get stopped, right? What will happen in any case? Any request is getting fail under that thread, right? So that this section will be defining. So we will be definitely we will be taking up in the JMeter and we will observe there how it looks like and how it works, right? Next is thread properties, right? So there are different thread properties. What is number of users, ramp up, right? Those things we will be discussing in thread property. Okay. Then we have scheduler configuration, right? So scheduler configuration defines when you want to schedule it, right? What do you want to schedule, right? Probably you want to schedule some like iteration based run, right? Which that will run in particular transactions or iterations, right? Or probably you want to run for some time duration, right? So how it will be run. So those all things comes in the scheduler config. Okay. So these all things are the that forms the components of thread group. So if we will just see on the diagram part, so this is how it looks like, right? Thread group, the action to be taken after a sampler error, this comes. Okay. Then we have thread properties, and in the last of this diagram, you can see the duration, right? Startup delay. Those things definitely define the schedule, right? How you want to go with the test. Okay. So let's discuss more about this in detail, right? And see what exactly and how the thread group is going on. Okay. So let me just remove this one and we will be seeing how exactly things are happening. Okay. So I'm just adding one dummy sampler, right? So this is just a mock of a sampler. So I will be assuming, okay, one user is doing a home request and there is a this is the HTTP request of a certain application of its home page, right? And we will call it as, for example, this thread group we will call like home users. Okay. And this we can call in like business transaction home. Okay. Similarly, now let's say we have another group of users, right? that we call as login only users. So they just log in. After whom they are just doing login and nothing else. Right? For that also I will just add one dummy sampler that just will be doing a mock. Okay. Right. So this is like this. Right. So now with these two thread groups, probably, or let's add one another group here. That is search group. This is the search only users. They are just doing a landing on the home and doing search. That's it. Right. So that this way we have categorized three different type of users in our application. Now we want to generate a load for these three type of users, right? And now we have to distribute the load among all these three users. So what we will do, we will create three thread groups, and from the data from the product team, let's say we come to know, okay, there are 20 home users that are coming every minute on the site, 50 login only, and there are remaining 30% or probably 30 users who are doing home and then searching, right? So this way we just enter these numbers here. So now with the help of this home user thread group, I will make understand each and everything. So now let's see. There are here, let's start with the thread properties section. So as of now, I will just disable these all two thread groups. We will understand the properties first. So thread properties, first property, number of threads. So number of threads, how many users you want. So let's say I want 20 users, right? So I have entered just 20. So next property is ramp up period, right? So ramp up period definitely this is very confusing. This is very confusing. Sometimes some users think, okay, this is the time definitely during which the load will be applied, right? That is completely wrong, right? Then some think ramp up time is the time after which these 20 users will be starting the test, right? So this statement is partially correct, right? But the actual definition is ramp up period is the time JMeter will take to create these what all these virtual users, right? So what does that mean? So let's say if I will enter here as five as a ramp up second. So this is the time that JMeter will take to create all these 20 users, right? So for example, after 1 second, probably JMeter must have created 3 users. After 2 seconds, it might have created 10 users, right? So by the end of fifth second, all 20 users will be created. All 20 virtual users will be created, and they will be actually starting the test, right? So this is not like after fifth second only every user will start. No, before fifth second or probably before 5 seconds only, the execution will start and will come into the picture the moment one virtual user is created, right? So let's say after 2 seconds, 5 users have been created by JMeter, so all those 5 users will start their execution. And after fifth second, all 20 users will be in the picture and they will be starting the test, right? So if we analyze this thing with a real time example, so that is like whenever the students are taking up the exam, right? Before that, they definitely get 5-10 minutes for filling up the OMR sheet, right? So that time is actual ramp up time. So basically, the examiner, they are ramping up the students, right? So they have distributed the OMR, right? And now they have given 10 minutes to fill up that thing, right? So now after 10 minutes, anybody student or probably any student in the examination who have filled the basic formalities, that is filling up the OMR, can begin the test, right? So the same situation lies here. Any virtual user that is done with the finalization or creation of the thread, that can start their test, right? So now let's say if we take 5 as the ramp up time, so that means these 20 virtual users will be created by the JMeter in at most 5 seconds, right? Now, loop count defines how many loop you want to execute for these users, right? So for example, you just want to execute every home transaction for a user once. So all users will come and will execute home page one, right? To see that, I will just add a listener and will definitely would like to call out like listeners are basically to display the result, right? So now we will see, I have just asked JMeter to execute single loop. So all 20 users came into the system and they have executed once. So the total transactions becomes 20. So please ignore all these fields that's available in the aggregate report because they are not like the scope of the session, right? So just focus on the samples column. So here just see 20. All the 20 users have made the single hit and that is recorded. Now, let's say, now you say, I want all 20 users to execute the home tries. So we will see that also. We will clear the results. We will play that with the green icon, right? And now you will see instead of 20, we will be having 63 transactions because we have instructed JMeter to do so, right? So see, 60 transactions, right? Now, this is we call iteration based, right? So we said, okay, execute 3 loops, right, with 20 users. So it got multiplied 20 by 3, 60 times that transaction will be executed. That is placed under the thread group, right? If it will be like there will be other HTTP requests also under the same thread group, so those will also execute that many times, right? So see, now BT home and BT home one both will be getting executed by all 20 users twice. So total request become 120 because this one also got executed 60 times. This also got executed 60 times. 60 times means 20 users executing home and home one twice. Alright. So now this is iteration based. Now let's say somebody says you and the requirement comes, okay, I want to execute the 20 users for example, for a half an hour. So what do you will do? So for definitely for half an hour, that loop will be an infinite loop, right? But now if we are placing an infinite loop, definitely we have to terminate that also, right? So do so. We there is a option called specify thread lifetime. So there we will enter the duration, right? So as of now, we will just consider that thing like we want to run it for 30 seconds, right? So let's see how things will go. So now our scenario is number of threads are 20, We are ramping up in 25 seconds and want to complete the test in 30 seconds with infinite loop, right? Now let's see what will happen. Now this is not iteration based, this is now time based, duration based. So now this test will goes on for 30 seconds and all 20 users will be keep executing all the requests that are under this thread group for next 30 seconds. Right. So see, there is a timer on the top right that is running, right? So the moment the 30 time is done, 30 seconds, the test has stopped. And you can see BT home transaction got executed 1025 time. That is the count actually. BT home one got executed 1070. Right. So this is like how you can do the concurrent transactions, right? So these all transactions has been done by those 20 users only, right? So those 20 users have triggered 1025 transactions for BT Home and 1017 for BT Home 1, right? And these transactions definitely don't take it as a general principle. These will definitely differ based on the application and application performance. It could be like these transactions got half in some applications where the logic is more complex, right? Because this is just a dummy, so that's why we are getting very good numbers. So it could be like in 30 seconds, the transaction just happened like 200, 300, right? So these numbers are totally application dependent, bandwidth dependent. Okay, so this is just basically a demonstration, right? How things goes on. So when you goes for the 20 users with 30 seconds, so these number of transactions per day. Okay, so this is like how you can use the internet, right? Now there is a startup delay section, right? So for example, you want to start the thread group, right? But probably after a certain duration, right? So this parameter comes into picture when there are multiple threads. So now let's say the login only users are there. There are 50. But what we want like this login only users to come into picture after the home users group is being executed. So let's say it takes 30 seconds to complete flow, right? So what we will do, we will add 30 seconds of the startup delay for this thread group, and then we will want to start the 50 users and we want to ramp up them in 10 seconds, right? So now what will happen actually? Initially, in 30 seconds, only 20 users will be created. Then after 30 seconds, in next 10 seconds, basically by 40th second, 50 users will be in the test and they will be executing for the next 30 seconds, right? And we have delayed this thread group with the 30 seconds by adding in the startup delay, right? So now let's see what will happen. Now see. Now see. Till 30 seconds, see on the top right, out of 70 users, only 20 users have been allocated by the JMeter because we have told so to do it. Right after 30 seconds, now see how things will change. All those 20 users got ramped down, and now again new fresh 50 users lot is coming. That is now BT login flow is going on. Now see BT home and BT home one numbers are constant because that thread group is done with execution. Now BT login only thread group is in picture, right? Now this thread group will be in the picture for 30 seconds, right? So now once the 30 seconds are done, that is after 30 seconds, next 30 seconds were for the BT login only. So after 1 minute, both thread groups got stopped, right? So this is how thread group delay comes into picture, right? If you will just say it, okay, I just want to start after a delay of 10 seconds, right? So you will see both thread groups will got will get parallel for a certain time. So now you will see after initial 10 seconds, you will see just only 20 thread groups allocated. Now after 10 seconds, just see another 50 users are starting ramping up. Alright. And now the total 70 users will be executing. And at the end of 30th second, the first thread group users will start ramping down. See, now only 50 users are there. These 50 users belongs to second thread group and they will be executing the test for the 30 seconds. That is from 30th second of the test to the 60th second of the test, right? Okay. So this is how things happen, right? So now, and probably you will see this time timer stopped at 30 seconds or 40 seconds, not on the 1 minute. So the reason was because earlier we have entered the 30 seconds as the delay. So the test become 1 minute duration. But here in the second time, we started this thread group also after 10 seconds. So in the next 10 seconds, it also got completed. So in total 40 seconds, both thread groups got executed, right? So this is like how thread properties control your entire test. Now, for example, you don't want to add any startup delay. Now the test duration will be becoming 30 and all threads will just start creating from the 0th second, right? So now see on the top right, all 70 users have been allocated by the JMeter in the initial 10, 11 seconds, right? Because we have asked to do so. So startup delay basically controls like after how much delay you want to start the threads of a particular thread. Okay. So this is like how you can control your flow, control your users, how like how many times you want to execute that thread group, or probably you want to execute on a iteration based, or you want to execute on the duration based. This all stuff you can do through thread group, right? So this session answers about a lot of questions, right? Like how I can uh, define the parallelism in JMeter, right? So definitely simply enter your users for how much users you want to do it, right? Now, similarly, if you want to do it for iterations, right? So questions comes, okay, if I want to do like 10,000 transactions for a particular request, it's simple, right? So if you want to do 10,000 transactions based on your machine performance, calculate how many users, first of all, your machine can take. For example, for the mock purpose, I'm just considering 100 users and I want to do a 10,000 transactions. So I will just enter 100. So this multiplier will become 10,000, right? So this will just inject a 10,000 transactions. So this way you can do the multiplier, you can do the iterations, right? So What is ramp up? Ramp up is simply the time in which JMeter will be creating the virtual users for you. So definitely, if you are allocating 100 threads, so at least you should give like about 30 to 40 seconds to at least ramp up those threads, right? Because if you will just instantly start that thing, so that creation time, JMeter thread creation time will also take some resources, right? So sometimes the client machine not is efficient. So during the ramp up only, things become very chaotic, and let's say on the server side also things become very chaotic. Like in the start of the test only, you just triggered a lot of threads. Probably the client machine was not able to handle, or if client machine was able to generate, the server get bombarded in the initial minute only, right? And all of sudden the test didn't went for the time you want to plan. So just do the ramp up in a very systematic way, gradually, right? So that you can execute the load for a good number of duration, right? But if your scenario is like that only, like you want to instantly ramp up that thing, so just ramp up it without any second, right? But if you are planning a continued test like for half an hour, 1 hour, or more than that, then you should have a rental. Okay. So iteration based, yeah, I was showing. I want to do the 10,000 transactions, and let's say there is one HTTP request, BT home in the plan. Let's see how it goes. If my machine can handle that, right? So yeah, here it goes. So now the 100 users are basically JMeter have created 100 virtual users to generate those 100 transactions, right? Each user is now doing the 100 transactions of that request. So you will see in the end there will be 10,000 transactions and the test will stop. Now see the ramp down is going on, right? Yeah. So the 10,000 requests done, right? Response times are plotted against it. You can see the rate, throughput rate. It was like around 295 requests per second were sent out, and the targeted goal was achieved in 34 seconds, right? So this way, targets based tests you can plan through by tweaking your number of threads and loop count. If you want to go for a duration base, so we know uh, we can use this duration parameter. If you want to tweak the startup delay, you can do it using startup delay, right? So the same thing you can do with the other thread groups, right? Ultimate thread group is there, right? So same thing you can do here, right? So similarly, and they give you the graph display thing also, right? For example, you want to start the same, like let's say we were considering 100 users in home, right? So for example, you want to go with the 100 user, initial delay 0, initial ramp up, let's say startup time, here it is called startup, so I want to go for a 5 seconds as the startup time, and then want to hold the load for 30 seconds, right? That you can mention. And similarly, now in here you can see the shutdown time is mentioned, that is not available in the traditional thread group. So these kind of differences, advantages, improvements have been done in these thread groups, right? You can mention here, okay, in 5 seconds I want the ramp down also be happening. So you can see the proper graph is also plotted for you how your user flow will be going on, right? So now let's say you want to add some more users for a different timeline. Let's say 20 users you want to add after let's say 5 seconds, right? Right, and with the same ramp up, okay. and you want to hold those users for 60 seconds, right? And want to ramp down those users with 5, right? You can see the graph now. So the complete graph is changed now, right? Initially, it started with the graph like 100 users, right? So then, after 100 users started with the zero delay. Then after 5 seconds, those users become 120. Then those 120 users executed from 9 seconds to probably the 35 or 36, right? Around 30 seconds. And then after that 35th second, the initial 100 users ramped down because it was targeted for 30 seconds. So that's why the users become 20, and those 20 users then executed for the rest of the time, right? Because they were targeted to hold the load. So this way you can mix a scenario, right? In ultimate thread group, right? So here comes one very important interview question, right? So let's say if you want to plan a spike test, how you will do in JMeter. So ultimate thread group is the answer to that, right? So you can do anything, whatever you want to do here, right? You can reduce the load, you can increase the load, right? You can definitely creating a spike, right? Right. So let's say, yeah, this way. So whatever, how you want your test to run, right? So you can plan this way. Let's see, the spike has been done because 80 users has been added after 30th second, right? So this way, these are other forms of thread groups, right? And you can take advantage of these, but the basic functionality is same. What should use a simulation, right? Similarly, the scheduling also scheduling configuration is there, and properties are also there, right? They are just named with some different terms. Okay. Similarly, then there is one important thread group. All there is concurrency thread group. Here also you can mention the same thing. Let's say you want to target for 100 users, ramp of 5 seconds, and you want to hold the load for 30 seconds. That's it. Here ramp down is not there, right? It's a added advantage in ultimate thread group, right? And ramp up step count values there. So this definitely classify further, right? So now let's say out of 100 users, you want to group them as 20, 20, 20, 25 into 5 groups. So you can just do this like so 20 users will definitely get breakdown and they will be ramping up in a group of 20. Now let's say if you don't want to do 20, want to do 25 users, so the 25 users will be grouped and they will be ramping up. All right. So in this, you can define like how users can do the session or how they can do the ramp up and how they can further group themselves, right? Or let's say you just want to make two groups, so you just enter two. So now initially 50 users will be ramping up, and then in another remaining time, like in 5 seconds, in 2.5 seconds, 50 users will ramp up. In the rest 2.5 seconds, another 50 users will ramp up. So this way, the entire 100. So the total number of users will remain same, ramp up will remain same. It's just a timeline, like how they will be ramping up. If you will enter two, so they will group into two, 50-50 users. If you enter four, they will be grouped into four parts, 20-20 users. But they will definitely ramp up in same time and for the same duration, right? And whole target rate you can control, like if you want in minute or in want in second, right? So that's all from today's session. I believe you guys liked this session and it was quite informative, right? So one topic is still is left from the demonstration part, but definitely we will be covering in coming master classes, right? like the action to be taken after a sampler error. But basically, in the basic since I have explained like how this works, right? Basically, what action shall be taken, whether the thread loop will be continued, if any error comes, or probably next thread loop will be started, or the thread will be stopped, or the test will be stopped. So we can define that thing based on our product, right? So, but still, in the coming master classes, we will cover this, right? And with the today's with this topic, right, or probably with the difference and the classification I have showed you, definitely I would like to call out the closer of this session, and definitely we will be coming up with more classes, more master classes, and more web series, right? Stay tuned to QA Training Nest, right? A lot of content will be coming, and definitely it's for our community, testing community, right? Please writing us what exactly topics you want to cover, right? And if you want to go for a full preparation also, so we have the plan for that also. You can contact with the support group, right? Thanks for the session. Thanks to all.